There's something. Uh, there's something rich about dark times, um, and you have to access a kind of mindset of the deep work in all the traditions, alchemy. You turn lead into gold. And there's something I was just reading the other day that someone was saying that uh, unless there was a certain amount of stress, the initial cell that we were in our mother's womb would never have split and differentiated. So it's very interesting images of it all depends on how you frame stress, trouble, crisis. The Japanese say crisis and opportunity. It's the same little ideogram. So try to frame it. So this longer poem this came this week for me. This longer poem is sort of it's a different frame for all this. It's called Interesting Times, and it'll be in the Monday morning musing tomorrow, so you can get the text on this. But I'll read it a couple of times. It's a little bit longer than the Bernard one, the Eckhart one, and just let it go in through your ear, and just pay attention to what resonates with your heart. It might just be one line, it might be one single image. So I'll read it a couple times, and then I'll break it open a little bit, and and then we'll have our show and tell, which goes with the poem. Interesting times. The Chinese curse says, "May you live in interesting times." Billions of years ago, the big breath breathed out the multiverse in waves of darkness and light. Right now, however, there's a huge wave of darkness rolling through our planet. A tsunami caused by the eruption of the collective unconscious. A second great flood. And like Noah, we need to build us an ark, a container strong enough to hold all of our unconscious reacting. All the terror, hatred, malice, and violence, hold them all in love in your heart of hearts until they are transformed into wisdom, compassion, trust, and unarmed loving kindness. Only then, with the horse before the cart, should we go forth into the madness like a human antipsychotic, into the flood like an island of sanity to help those drowning in psychic sludge. For intranauts, it's a blessing to live in interesting times. There's a lot in there, maybe a few unfamiliar words. So let's listen to it again. Then we'll sort of break it open again a bit. The Chinese curse says, "May you live in interesting times." Billions of years ago, the big breath breathed out the multiverse in waves of darkness and light. Right now, however, there's a huge wave of darkness rolling through the planet. A tsunami caused by the eruption of the collective unconscious. The second great flood. And like Noah, we need to build us an ark, a container strong enough to hold all of our unconscious reactions. All the terror, hatred, malice, and violence. Hold them all in love in your heart of hearts until they are transformed into wisdom, compassion, trust, and unarmed loving kindness. Only then, with the horse before the cart, should you go forth into the madness like a kind of human antipsychotic, into the flood like an island of sanity to help those drowning in psychic sludge. For intranauts, it's a blessing to live to live in interesting times. For intronauts, it's a blessing to live in interesting times. Okay, well, let's start with the last line. I say for intronauts. We talked about this yesterday with the group that showed up for a little intensive practice. There's astronauts and cosmonauts. These are guys who are, that both means the same thing. The sailors among the stars. These are the guys who are making this exterior exploration into outer space. Well, intronauts, which is what this training is, we're training to be intronauts. Intronauts are trained to go into inner space, to explore inner space. And so the last line is for intronauts. It's a blessing to live in interesting times. Probably there's a lot of images to unpack, like that. I'm talking about that there's, in the one line, I'm talking about that there's been an eruption of the collective unconscious. It's kind of flooding out. That's a Jungian term, which means we're all connected. All the 7 billion people on the planet are connected at this level of the deepest level of our consciousness, which Jung called the collective unconscious. And we all have similar, but different kinds of darkness and light that are sort of stuck there. Jung's idea of enlightenment was bringing everything up to consciousness, everything up to present awareness, leaving nothing down there. No darkness down there. It's a process of bringing it up, and then you can deal with it as long as it's down there. It's running your life. It's again that St. Paul quote that I talked about yesterday in Romans, where he said, I know the right thing to do. I know exactly what I want to do. And then, damn it, but I just go and do the other thing. Why is that? Well, we're being run by something we can't see, you see. And so the whole idea of liberation is not to, of enlightenment is not to imagine figures of light, but to actually bring the darkness to light. That's why it gets lighter. You bring it up. You can't resist. You could have a cave that's been dark for 17 billion years if you want, or however old our planet is. They think the Big Bang happened about 17 billion years ago there, give or take. But so maybe we've had this cave that's been on the planet here 3 billion years, and it's been dark the whole time, and then you walk in and light a match. Well, can't stand the light, you see, so this bring it up. Now our problem is we have a lot of it kind of erupting in a lot of people right away, and I'm not going to go into the reasons why we're having this, not just in the United States with the latest stuff going on in the Capitol, but all over the planet. And we need to build us an ark, which means a container strong enough because when things erupt, it triggers our unconscious and we erupt. We're terrified. We get angry. We hate people. We wish people, malice is pretty strong. We wish people, that unfortunate things happen to them, and then just out and out violence. We saw all of those things: terror, hatred, malice, violence last Wednesday. If you have, this job is to build a container strong enough, first of all, to hold your own. So you don't have to, again, if you don't transform it, you transmit it. And we saw that last Wednesday. At the Capitol. And so our call as intronauts, as people in a contemplative practice, is to hold our own, transform it. And then you can turn all those things into wisdom, compassion, trust, and unarmed loving kindness. One of the QAnon shaman, the guy with the horns and the coyote stuff and all that, running around with all these Nordic things and QAnon things tattooed on him. He said, "Well, I don't worry about getting arrested. Jesus was arrested, and Gandhi was arrested, and Martin Luther King was arrested." And then somebody, yeah, but they weren't violent. They weren't violent. A small difference here. So before we actually work on unity, which we're working on. When we try to transform these things, we're doing our part. But if somebody else is just acting out, yeah, I mean, these guys hit before they, it's that line here. When you've done this work, only then, with the horse before the cart, can you go forth into the fray and actually be an effective activist. We're talking the image of having the horse before the cart is you do the contemplation and then the action. If it's the other way around, you're putting the cart before the horse. We just run out and try to help somebody, but you haven't transformed your own inner unconscious reactions. You might do more harm than good. See, so it's like putting the horse before the cart, having contemplation. All those guys, Merton, Gandhi, Dalai Lama, all these guys who are these incredible activists, they all had established a contemplative practice, and then that informed their activism. You see. Yeah, I said you could, once you've done that work, you're almost like a human antipsychotic in a sea of madness. You can be an island of sanity. That was what we were talking about last week. And actually, people who are drowning in this kind of psychic sludge can come to your island. See, you can help people out. In that case, if you're really committed to this sense of transforming yourself, transforming the world, you put the horse before the cart. You do this serious work. You guys have been showing up, and some of you guys have been showing up for years doing this work. That's serious. And then you can go in and help some other people. Not before. So here's a couple show and tell items from the Tibetan tradition. And if you ever see let me see, I might have to put this down here. That will be a little better. This is the more important stuff. This is the Tibetan word is a drilbu, but it's just a handbell. And this is a dorje. It's a little lightning bolt kind of object. You can even see one on top here of this. Now, these two things, you'll often see Tibetans, Dalai Lama and those guys, when they're really doing their transformative chanting, they're doing, it's just like some of you who have seen, yesterday saw the endless knot or the endless connectivity. This is the feminine principle, and it stands for wisdom. In most traditions, Christian and the Buddhist, wisdom is feminine. And I mean, it's mostly space. Without the space, you wouldn't be able to hear the truth, you see. So it's always feminine. And this thunderbolt, feminine and wisdom is the bell. And the thunderbolt is masculine, and it stands for compassion. So they're always trying to try to integrate wisdom and compassion. The absolute, when we drop in a moment when we drop into the absolute territory of meditation, we're dropping into a meeting with the absolute. Okay, and that's wisdom. And then coming out of that, then you can take action, and that's called the relative. That's related to things. You see, once you have this relation with the absolute, then you can be trusted. You can trust yourself in your relationships and helping people and whatnot. So these two go together. They're not separate at all. Richard Rohr's place is called the action and the place for action and contemplation. Merton, one of the last books he wrote was Contemplation in a World of Action. We could say contemplation in a world of consumption would be, to do what we're doing is really radical. To just do this hour is really radical because we're becoming intranauts. I told the group yesterday that Tibetan Buddhists don't call themselves Buddhists. They don't refer to it like some club we listen. They live, with Buddhists. No, they call themselves Nangpa, Nangpa, and Nangpa means insider. I'm an insider. I'm somebody who works on the inside before I go to the outside. And then ultimately, there's no wall between these two. There's no wall between the inside and the outside. It's a question of uh, what's the cart and what's the horse. Keep that image there. The whole idea. You better put the cart before the horse. You better put the inner work before the outer work. Then you're going to be like these other guys. You're going to be like Merton and Gandhi and Martin Luther King. They all had a prayer life. It's the only way. And they'd find out by dropping down and having this FaceTime with the beloved what they should do next. They prayed a lot. See? And then they went out and marched. If you see the movie Gandhi, I remember seeing it here in Bardstown when it opened, and I kept telling Pam, come on, let's go. This is a great movie. We got to get there. We might not get in. She says, are you kidding? And so when we got there, sure enough, there was a long line out the door, but it was a line to go see a Bruce Willis film. And when we went in the Gandhi thing, there was Pam, I, and one other guy. And everybody else was in the Bruce Willis film. So she'd never let me forget that. I never rush her to go to see, well, we don't see movies right now. But so, this is a path that's, less traveled, what we're doing here. You got to see how radical it is, but how important it is, because it leads to helping the world. It leads to creating a planet. You get the skill to have more effect when you think of what these Merton did and Gandhi did, these little guys, Desmond Tutu, Dalai Lama, they all have the same approach, the approach we're practicing now. And so we put in our time here. And so whatever comes up when we go down to meet the beloved. Jesus laid it out. They tried to sort of trap him into offending somebody. They said, well, what's the greatest commandment? And they expected whichever one he picked, somebody else would get pissed off because they think that's the greatest. And he just did a total end run around it all. He said, well, to love God with your whole mind, heart, and soul, and then to love your neighbor as yourself. Well, those aren't any of the commandments. Those are underneath the commandments. He was much deeper than the scribes and the Pharisees. You can imagine them, sort of scratching their head. I never realized it as a school kid that wasn't one of the commandments, but so what he's saying is this is the important thing, to have some FaceTime with the beloved, the whatever you want to call it, God, or, everybody has their own imagination of what this is, but it's the thing that loves you unconditionally. And it's also the thing that you can love unconditionally. And you need some of that time before you go out into the fray of your own family, at work, in the streets, whatever wherever you're called to do. See? Okay? So let's go and do the essential blast off thing. We're blasting off into inner space here. Can be dangerous work, just like being an astronaut or a cosmonaut is dangerous work, because you never know what's going to come up. So you have to be prepared if negativity comes up. That's okay. You hold it. And gradually, as you practice meditation, you're able to hold everything and just work with it. So you just sit with it, just hold it. It'll transform into something that will have good energy, no matter how negative it is.